In the heart of the bustling village of Ogidi, where the bamboo trees stood tall and the red earth told tales of generations, and arranged marriage thrives, and the widows were often treated as outcasts. Without their husbands, they had no voice or standing within the community. Their rights to property and inheritance were frequently ignored, and they were often blamed for their husbands' death, accused of harboring ill omens or curses, and the harsh treatment left them vulnerable, with no one to defend or support them. This was where the story of Amara was told many years after its occurrence. In the village of Ogidi lived a woman named Amara. The village, nestled in the plains of eastern part of Nigeria, was a place where traditions ran deep and the community was tightly knit. Amara, a mother of three, was known for her kindness, resilience, and beauty. Indeed, Amara was a very beautiful lady. Her long and beautiful legs caused men to turn anytime she passes. While growing up, Amara was sought by many men as they wished to marry her. She was approached by many of the young men from her village and even from the neighboring villages, but Amara did not like any one of them. Among the suitors coming for Amara's hand in marriage was a man named Aguba. Aguba met Amara one day while returning from his farm on a hot afternoon. As she was returning from the village stream with a water pot on her head, and he immediately desired her. Aguba was well known in the village for his polygamous nature, and he always boasts of how he will become the only man with the largest number of wives and children in their community. Aguba already had 11 wives, and the youngest of his wives was the same age with his first daughter, but he seemed not to care. At times, the villagers wondered and whispered among themselves. They wondered how he managed to convince the family of the maidens into giving him their daughters' hands in marriage. And so, most of the villagers began to suspect he must have used charm on the ladies and their families. After coming across Amara on his way from the farm, Aguba promised himself that he must make Amara one of his wives. He thought of how his marriage to Amara, the most beautiful and fairest of all maidens, will boost his ego. But despite all he did, Amara kept rejecting him. One day, as Amara was returning from the stream, she was stopped by Aguba, who began professing his love for her. He told her how he would take very good care of her if she accepts to marry him. In Ogidi village, a man is entitled to marry as many wives as possible, and these wives were always controlled by the first wife, who was considered the head wife. Aguba even promised Amara the position of head wife among his other wives, but Amara was so disgusted by his words, and she immediately told him how she would rather die as a maiden than to be married to him, a man old enough to be her father. Amara spat out as she continued on her way back home, leaving Aguba feeling insulted and his pride wounded. In Ogidi village, there lived a young hunter named Nduka. He was famous in the village for his hunting skills, and his fame mostly came from the big bushmeats that were always caught by his tribe. One day, while coming back from his hunting spree with one of his friends named Amobi, Nduka met Amara, who was returning from the farm where she went to gather firewood. Amara greeted the two men as she continued her journey back home. Nduka was immediately captivated by the maiden's beauty. He could not believe that such beauty exists and that it exists in their village. He wondered whose daughter she is and why he never met the maiden before. He was told by his friend that Amara is the only daughter of Mazi Ezioku and that she only goes out either to fetch water from the stream, pick firewood from her father's farm, or whenever she's going to the market. Nduka immediately fell in love with Amara, for he was attracted by her beauty and humility. 3 days later, as Nduka was returning from the bush with a very big grass cutter which he cut with his trap, he met Amara again, this time on her way returning from the stream. Nduka offered to accompany her home, and Amara accepted with smiles on her face. On their way back to Amara's house, Nduka told Amara of how he would like to come with his people for her hand in marriage. Amara was overjoyed, though this was the second time of her speaking with the young handsome hunter. But she had always secretly watched him from the window of her room whenever he's returning from the bush. Though Nduka did not know that Amara has been his secret admirer, and that she always feels sad any day Nduka did not pass through her father's compound. Amara, after getting home, could not erase the thought of the young hunter from her mind. She will sit by the corner of the hearth with a dreamy look and a beautiful smile on her face as she thinks of her conversation with Nduka. Not long after his conversation with Amara, Nduka met with his kinsmen. He asked them to accompany him to Mazi Ezioku's house in order to seek for his daughter's hand in marriage. Nduka has an older brother named Agoba, the same Agoba who wanted to have Amara as his wife but couldn't. After Nduka announced his interest in the young maiden, Agoba met with him and tried to dissuade him from marrying Amara. His reason being that Amara's beauty will always attract men to her, even as a married woman. But he was disappointed as Nduka insisted on marrying Amara. Nduka went ahead to perform the traditional marriage rites of Amara and then brought her home to live with him as his wife. And this means that Amara and Agoba get to see each other on daily basis. And this always makes Agoba feel jealous and bitter, for her presence always reminds him of how she rejected him, only for her to accept his younger brother. Many years later, with their family growing, as Nduka and Amara now has 3 beautiful children, 2 boys and 1 girl, and his bushmeat business continued to grow. He even bought many lands where he grew lots of cash crops. Meanwhile, Agoba was not happy with his brother's family. He hated how the woman he desired rejected him but married his brother. He hated how his brother's children were always used as good example whenever the villagers are cautioning other children in the village. And so he began to plan on how he will ruin their happy home. One morning, as Nduka was getting ready to go and check his traps in the bush, his wife Amara tried to stop him. She told her husband of the terrible dream she had about him. In her dream, she said Nduka was killed by a man. "Did you saw who it was that killed me in your dream?" Nduka asked his wife. "No, his face was masked," replied Amara. "Amara, nothing will happen to me. I will go and come back just like every other days," Nduka told his wife as he picked up his hunting tools and began walking towards the bush. It was mid-afternoon and Nduka has not yet returned from the bush. This got Amara worried as she remembered the dream she had the previous night. She quickly rushed to Aguba's house in order to inform him that his brother has not yet returned from the bush. He assured her not to worry, that maybe her husband decided to hunt for more animals, the reason for his late return, and that if he still did not return before sunset, then he will go in search of him. Amara went back to her house, but she was still unable to shake off the feeling of uneasiness in her. Evening came, and yet Nduka has not returned from the bush. Aguba, with the help of some young men of the village, went in search of him, and it was a very long search. It was already getting dark when they come upon the cold and lifeless body of Nduka, lying deep in the bush on his own pool of blood. Amara was so devastated by the death of her husband. Who will help her take care of the children? Who will hold her when the night gets cold? All this and more runs through her mind as she regretted not putting more efforts in making sure her husband did not go hunting that day. Nduka's body was buried, and the mourning process began according to their custom and tradition. In Ogidi village, when a man dies, his widow were meant to go through many rites, from shaving of their hair to the popular white clothes, white slippers, and white hair ties, which a widow who is still mourning wears before stepping out from her house into the village. She was always expected to be through with whatever she is doing and go back home before 6 o'clock in the evening. These and many more were the things expected of a widow in Ogidi village. Most times, in a situation where the widow bears no male child for the dead husband, the brothers and kinsmen of the deceased will take the man's land and most of his valuable properties, leaving the widow to cater for herself and female children with no support. This was the situation Amara found herself in, as her late husband's brother Aguba took away all the money that she was given by sympathizers during Nduka's burial, thereby leaving her penniless. The days that followed were a blur of grief and sorrow for Amara. Her children, too young to fully grasp the magnitude of their loss, clung to her, seeking comfort. But as the initial shock wore off, a new, more insidious challenge emerged. Nduka's brother and kinsmen, who had shown little interest in the family while he was alive, appeared at Amara's door. "Amara," began Aguba, Nduka's elder brother, his voice dripping with a false sympathy. "We know how hard this must be for you, but as is our tradition, Nduka's properties must stay within the family. It is our duty to ensure that his lands and home are managed properly," said Aguba. Amara's heart sank. She knew what this meant. In their village, widows often faced the cruel tradition of property grabbing by male relatives. It was a practice as old as the ancient trees, one that left many women destitute and vulnerable. She looked at her children, their innocent face filled with uncertainty, and a surge of determination filled her. She would not let them take what was rightfully hers and her children's. She may look weak, but she will not allow them take away everything she and her husband worked so hard to build for their children. "Aguba," she replied, her voice steady but her hands trembling. "This land, This home, it is all we have left of Nduka. We built this together. It belongs to my children. And besides, if you take all his lands, what will I use to feed his children? For goodness sake, Aguba, your brother left behind 3 children and a widow. It's not like he's childless. So I will advise all of you to take your minds and eyes off my husband's properties. Amara told her husband's people with so much boldness that surprised even herself. Aguba's expression hardened. Tradition is tradition, Amara. You can stay, but the lands and the house must be managed by us. It is the way of our ancestors. Amara knew arguing with Aguba would be futile, but she was not ready to give up. The days that followed were filled with harassment and intimidation. Nduka's brother would come by daily, making it clear that she was no longer welcome in her own home. He would disrupt her work in the farm. Her once thriving farm, a testament to her hard work and a source of pride, was being trampled under the weight of injustice. But Amara's resolve only grew stronger. She sought advice from the village elders, hoping they would uphold her rights. But the elders, bound by tradition and wary of causing discord, offered little support. "It is not our place to interfere in family matters, Amara," said one of the elders, his voice tinged with regret. "Perhaps you can reach an agreement with Aguba." No, she will not reach any agreement with Aguba. This is her husband's land, and for the sake of her children, she will not allow Aguba take it away from her. One day, as Amara was walking in one of the lands, Aguba came with some young men. They began dragging Amara out of the land. All her cries and pleas fell on deaf ears as Aguba threatened to use more harsher ways when next she enters any of the lands. Days turned into weeks, and Amara continued to face threats from Nduka's brother. Her children, once lively and carefree, grew quiet and fearful. The injustice was taking a toll on all of them. Desperation drove Amara to the village chief, a man known for his fairness. The chief listened to her plight intently. "Amara, your case is very difficult. The law does not always protect women in these situations, but I will see what I can do." The chief invited Aguba and Amara to his house in order to settle the differences between them. "Aguba, your late brother's wife here came to complain to me that you have refused to let her farm in any of the farmlands left behind by her husband. I know this is your family problem, and according to our custom and tradition, a non-family member shouldn't get involved in it. But I'm only here to give advice and also appeal to your conscience. Please, allow your brother's wife to make use of the farmlands, if not for any other thing, but for the sake of your brother's children," the chief pleaded. But Aguba refused, insisting that Amara should leave the farmlands for him. He even accused her of killing his brother, and that she should swear for him at the shrine of their great deity that she, Amara, has no hand in his brother's death. He said Amara must have killed her husband, thinking she would possess his properties. The accusation from Aguba came as a huge shock to Amara. She loved her husband and will never think of killing him. Amara remembered the dream she had before her husband's death, and even after her husband's death, Amara still dreams of her husband crying on his grave. In one of her dreams, Nduka even revealed to her that his death was not natural, but when she tried to find out who was his killer, she woke up from her dream. She knew this was one of Aguba's way of punishing her for her rejection, and so, not willing to back down easily, she insisted that Aguba will also swear with her. Aguba was caught off guard, as he was not expecting Amara to suggest church. Aguba could not refuse, as it will look suspicious, and so he agreed while planning on his next move. The village chief, seeing how serious the two were about swearing, summoned the chief priest. The day of the oath taking was fixed, and the village chief dismissed the two, telling them to go home and wait for the appointed day. After the meeting with the village chief, Aguba became so tensed. He wasn't expecting Amara to suggest that. He must not swear, as he already knew what will happen if he should swear. Amara has ruined his plan, and this made Aguba's hatred for her grew. Aguba knew he has to think fast, so he went to Agwo Turumbe, a native doctor known for his black magic. Aguba asked Agwo Turumbe to fortify him against the oath-taking. Agwo Turumbe prepared what Aguba asked of him. He told him that he should go ahead and take the oath, that nothing will happen to him, provided he drink the medicine he will give him before taking the oath. He assured Aguba that on that day, he will strike Amara to death once she takes the oath, making it seem like she was guilty of her husband's death. Aguba left the shrine of Agwo Turumbe, confident that things will go according to his plan. The oath taken between Amara and Aguba was scheduled on Eke market day. That morning, Aguba prepared himself, just as Agwo Turumbe instructed him. He was happy and confident with himself. He had a smile of a man who knew things was about to go as he planned. Before Amara left for the shrine, she went to her husband's grave. Kneeling down beside Nduka's grave, Amara called on her husband's spirit to come and fight for her and his children. I know Aguba must have planned something to twist the outcome of this oath, she said. I want you to expose your killer, so your spirit will rest among your ancestors, said Amara in tears. At the shrine, the chief priest of the village deity turned to Amara and Aguba, telling them to think again about what they were about to do. For once they swear in front of the deity, there will be no going back for the guilty one. Aguba was so much confident as he urged the chief priest to go ahead with the rituals so that the guilty one will be punished. Before they began to swear, the chief priest gave the two a liquid substance which was poured inside a calabash. He ordered them to drink from the calabash. Amara sipped from the calabash without hesitating, while Aguba was a bit reluctant. But he later sipped from the calabash. He assured himself that the substance from Agwo Turumbe will nullify whatever the chief priest gave to him. Aguba went ahead to swear in front of the deity, unknown to him that the substance from the shrine was stronger than what Agwo Turumbe gave to him. Immediately he finished swearing, Aguba was struck by an unknown force. He fell to the ground while screaming for help. He confessed of how he followed his brother into the bush on the day he died. He also confessed of hitting Nduka on the head with a big stick and how he continued striking him with the stick until he died. He told everyone that he was angry at Amara for rejecting him but later got married to his brother. He was envious of his brother for being richer, while him, despite the large number of his family, could not boast of half of Nduka's wealth. He confessed of going to Agwo Turumbe, the black wizard, thinking he will help him twist the outcome of the swearing. He begged Amara for her forgiveness and pleaded with the elders and the village chief to pardon him. Aguba was banished from Ogidi village, for it was a very big taboo for anyone to kill his brother. After Aguba's banishment, Amara recovered all her husband's properties, and with her properties and dignity restored, Amara's life began to improve. Her farm flourished once more, and her children regained their joy. The community, inspired by her courage, started to advocate for changes in the traditions that had long oppressed widows. Amara's story spread beyond the village. Her courage taught everyone that traditions, while important, should never be used to oppress the vulnerable. For true strength lies in the ability to adapt and grow, ensuring that justice and fairness are upheld for all.